Joining us now is our political analyst, Paul Lisek. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning.
Talk about what are the demographics that lifted Trump? All of them, pretty much, I guess.
Yeah, everything except college-educated white women. He made inroads more than he did in 2020, more than 2016, in every single group. So there had been a thought that women would really come out big time for Harris, and men, younger men, because of the Joe Rogan podcast, would come out for him. The reality of it is, but also they don't vote. The reality is they did vote, they did come out, and young people, women, again, he made inroads at all of those. And she did not do as well in many of those demographics as Joe Biden did back in 2020.
She is set to be speaking in the 10 o'clock hour this morning. What do you expect to hear from her?
Well, I don't think we're going to hear any kind of rejection of results or anything. I think she will take the stand. She will accept defeat. She will concede to him and then talk about the importance of unity and coming together. And she will likely say there's more that unites us than divides us. So she'll use some of those standard lines, I'm assuming. And that's the way we have a peaceful transition of power. And that's what she will be part of.
Democrats will look back and they'll try and figure out what
was wrong with the message.
Yeah.
Because it didn't just cost him in the presidential, it's cost him in the Senate. There's clearly a mood shift in this country. The economy is number one. Over 70% of the public has said that the country's on the wrong track, which can mean a lot of different things. Yeah. But Democrats put all their eggs in the basket of abortion, that was going to be critical, and democracy, those two issues. Democracy did rate fairly high in exit polls in terms of what was on people's minds, but apparently people were saying, and I think Donald Trump will protect democracy. And I say that because they clearly voted for him. So Democrats had the agenda wrong, they had priorities wrong, but I think they couldn't overcome that strong feeling in the country that we're on the wrong track.
And that Kamala Harris was still tied to Joe Biden, and talk about, I'm sure there's going to be discussion, what if Joe Biden dropped out earlier, or they opened it to someone other than Kamala Harris?
Netflix will make a series about that one.
Right.
Look, hey, Joe Biden in the debate, had they not had the debate on June 27th when it was, and we didn't see sort of the issues he was having, he might very well have been the candidate, but he clearly would have lost, I think most people would suggest. But the real question is, imagine he had decided earlier that he was going to be a one-term president, that he had done the transition, and then turned it over for a full primary process. That might have given you somebody different than Kamala Harris as the nominee, and things might or might not have been different. But that's not what happened. She stepped in and had 100 days to deal with the whole campaign.
Few wars going on around the globe.
Yeah.
President Trump has been close with the leader of North Korea, of Russia. What does this mean? And now the North Koreans are fighting along with the Russians. What does this mean for global affairs?
Well, I found it, let me go to something you reported earlier, Larry, which was I found it very interesting that Putin is one of the few world leaders that has not congratulated Trump, and the Kremlin issuing a statement that says, essentially, the United States and we're not friends, so we're not going to congratulate him. Putin is not stupid. I think there's strategy behind that. We know that Trump has had several conversations, reported in Bob Woodward's new book, at least 7 of them, with Vladimir Putin. And Putin himself, and Trump himself has basically said, Putin can do, quote, whatever the hell he wants. So I think what probably happens is that Trump potentially gives a blessing to Putin to take part of Ukraine as part of a settlement. Remember, Trump said he's going to, within 24 hours, have this thing settled, and I think it only gets settled if he gives Putin a little bit more of what he wants out of Ukraine.
Is this one issue, though, where perhaps Republican senators and legislators do not agree with him on?
There would have been a time I would have said yes, but again, Trump's control is really so complete and taking over the Senate, I just don't think you're going to see, maybe somebody like Lindsey Graham will speak out a bit against it. It's not only Ukraine. You have Israel and Gaza as well. And Trump has, again, said, he's told Netanyahu, do whatever you need to do to end this thing. So we see where his alliances are. Do I think a Senate will stand up to him? Not anymore. Interesting
that you forget President Trump and President Biden will have that meeting where they cross paths, right?
That's part of a tradition, is it? Oh, and Obama had it with Trump when he first moved in, and so this time around. Now, of course, it might not happen because Trump could say, I don't need it, I've been there before. Yeah. But it is tradition. However, Biden, again, I think in keeping the traditions the way Democrats handled it, will be gracious. They will say what they need to say, and then Trump will probably report on it after the meeting happens, when it happens. Closer to the transition time.
We'll see what happens. Paul Lisek, thanks for joining us all morning. Appreciate it.